Welcome to this webinar on home energy funding and support. Just going to start off very quickly with some introductions. I'm Molly Hogg from CAFS. I'm just here to chair today, and with me we've got our experts around the room. So what we're going to do is, very shortly, I'm going to hand over to Beth Middleton, who is our guest speaker today, and Beth works for South Lakeland District Council, and she's going to be talking about the Sustainable Warmth Cumbria Grant scheme, which is the scheme that she's managing. After that, we're going to move on to Tina Holt, who's from CAFS, and Tina's going to outline the other sources of funding that are available for home energy efficiency. Unfortunately, not a huge amount to tell you, but she'll tell you what there is available. And then we're going to move on to Andrew, who leads the energy team at CAFS. And Andrew's going to run through the various services and support available from CAFS around home energy. And he'll bring Tina back in for her expert bits around retrofit. We're going to aim to leave at least 20 minutes at the end for your questions. And I've also got a very quick poll just to see whether which of these opportunities you might be interested in. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Beth.
That's great. Yeah, evening everyone. Thank you all for popping in to see us. As you said, I'm Beth. I work in the strategy department at South Lakeland District Council. So more than happy to take questions at the end. However, my email address is there. So please feel free to take a note of it, and you can direct any questions to me afterwards if you need to. So as Molly said, I'm going to be talking about the Sustainable Warmth Cumbria Grant scheme. This is operating across the whole of Cumbria. I obviously work for South Lakeland District Council, so that's the perspective I'll be taking. However, of course, it is a Cumbria approach. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the scheme actually is. So it's all about retrofitting, which means installing measures into a home where the property wasn't originally built with them. And it's all about things that have energy efficiency standards and things such as low carbon heating into properties that are eligible. So measures could include various types of insulation. It could be your loft, your external wall, cavity wall, underfloor. We have your low carbon heating methods, so your solar panels, your air source heat pumps. And we also have things like first time double glazing. So, you're going from single glazing to double glazing. We also have some nice fancy new external doors, the properly insulated types, as well as some smart heating controls as well. So for this scheme, both on-grid and off-grid gas properties can receive grants. So if you're on-grid for gas, you can get up to £10,000 worth of funding. And happily, a bit of feedback we've given is that obviously a lot of homes in Cumbria are off-grid, they're very rural. So the budget cap has been increased to £25,000, which is really positive. And obviously it's a significant amount of money that people can be able to tap into. So another little comment there is that the scheme is free if you're a homeowner, and there's no costs. The retrofit assessment's entirely free, as is the works that are carried out. However, if you live in a rented property or you know someone that would like to apply that does, the tenant can make the application with the landlord's approval, but the landlord must pay a third of the costs. Any works are then capped at £5,000. So there's a little caveat there. And I put the logo for Carlisle City Council in the bottom corner just to remind me to let you know that, as I say, it's a Cumbria-wide project. Although I'm from South Lakeland, we are all involved in it, and it's Carlisle leading that scheme as well. So if anyone applies and gets a bit of correspondence, maybe an email or a telephone number from Carlisle, it is legitimate. So yeah, next slide, please, Molly. So, as I said, there is a little bit of criteria to make sure that you are eligible to get onto the scheme, and it's split into being both an eligible resident and having an eligible property as well. So just looking at who you are, we ask that there's a gross annual income of £30,000 or less per household. That does also include any self-employment, pensions, it could be benefits as well. And we ask that there's £50,000 or less in savings in order to get onto the scheme. It's purely just so we can focus on the people that maybe need it as a priority over others. And then the eligible property, first one, quite easy. Property has to be in Cumbria. also need the Energy Performance Certificate, or the EPC, of a D, E, F, or a G. If you don't have one, that's not a problem. If you think your home is energy inefficient, then you can still apply. A new EPC is generated as part of the scheme, both before and after as well, so you get a nice comparison. And as I touched on earlier, it can be owner occupied or rented. So next slide, please. So very simply put, when's it happening? It's right now. We've been accepting applications since the summer. We are still accepting applications, although the scheme is set to end the 31st of March next year. We still have a pipeline of funding from the government as well. So we're expecting, large interest in this scheme, and we're still happily taking people on. We did probably about two months ago now sent 13,000 letters out to residents that we believe are eligible, and that was based on some fancy software analysis in the background that we did. But even if you didn't receive a letter, or a resident that didn't get one, you can still apply. It doesn't exclude anyone in that sense at all. And as I briefly touched on this, but if you go online and simply type in Carlisle City Council Sustainable Warmth into your Google search, or you can use this web link, which I'm sure we can share with you afterwards, you will come up with this screen there. You get the picture there. It gives you a little bit of information about the scheme, and there's an application form online. You can either fill it in and email it back to homelife@carlisle.gov.uk, or you can post it to them, and their postal address is on the website as well. So again, just being very clear that although it's South Lakeland, any application and correspondence will be with Carlisle City Council, although we can still get involved if you'd like that as well. Thank you. Next slide, please. So in terms of how to apply, as I said, you type in the web into the search for Carlisle City Council Sustainable Warmth, and you'll come to that website earlier. You can check that you're eligible. You can check your EPC rating online. There's a link on the website as well, so it's all sort of stepped out for you, and you can complete that application form. As I said, it is accessible online, but if you need any help with printing or posting it out, then please just either email me directly or email the Housing Standards team. At the minute, they're taking around 14 days to check the eligibility. But they are getting more staff members in at the minute. They've got quite a big recruitment drive, so that number could very much be a lot lower by now. And we do ask that you supply evidence of fund with your application. However, I know I'm firing a lot of information out, but the website really is quite good at describing what we need to do. And you can just see a copy of the application form there, which is quite self-explanatory. Thank you. So once you've submitted your application form, it's received by Carlisle, and it's checked against all of the eligibility criteria that we went through earlier. So your energy performance certificate, your income, your savings. And if they deem that you are eligible, they will send someone round to do what's called a retrofit assessment. And a bit like this person in the image, they come around at a time that's convenient to you, and it will determine what's suitable for your home, and it will take into account what measures you're interested in. So for instance, if you have a specific interest in solar panels or loft insulation, or maybe underfloor insulation, they'll try and take that into account based on what your home is like and what could be suitable. That report is then sent back to Carlisle. The homeowner should get a copy of that as well, and it will be agreed between everybody. So once the retrofit assessment's performed, it's not just a dictation over what you're getting as the homeowner or the landlord. You still get a choice in what's put in, and they'll book a date for the retrofit. And you can see the logo there that I've put on the scheme. So any correspondence by sort of post or email, even the tradespeople that come around should be able to show you that logo as well, just to give an extra sort of level of security and confidence in it. Thank you, Molly. So yeah, if you've got any queries, whether you're in the application process or you're wondering about extra information, the first point of contact is homelife@carlisle.gov.uk, and their further details are there. However, just because Carlisle are leading the scheme, please don't hesitate to get in touch with either the Housing Standards team or myself directly. More than happy that my email's there. I've got a direct telephone line as well, which I'm more than happy to give out. And I think we'll take questions at the end, Molly. Is that
Yes,
probably best?
yes, if that's all right, that's great. Well, thank you very much, Beth. And yes, we will send the slides out to everybody, so you've got these email addresses and this background information to help you along. Also, just to mention, we've got the Q&A box. You can put some questions in, or feel free to use the chat. There's not a huge amount of people on the call, so whichever's most convenient for you. If you've got a question, you can log that there, and then I'll go through the questions at the end. Okay, great. We're going to move on now to Tina, who's going to talk about other funding available. So over to you, Tina. You muted, Tina?
Yeah, so as you said, Molly, thank you. There's not a huge amount of funding available, additional funding available, but I will say a bit about the boiler upgrade scheme, and also just a mention in passing really that you may have heard of ECO, the Energy Company Obligation Funding Scheme. So the government's latest version of this is called ECO 4. It's in the pipeline, and Beth didn't talk about it because it's not quite ready yet. They will be doing something with it at some point fairly soon. But in Cumbria, for example, E.ON are one of the main eco providers and have been for some time. So if you've heard of eco, it's still there, it's still going on. They're probably mopping up Eco 3 and moving over to Eco 4, and every time they change their criteria, they change the measures available slightly. So it's a case of watching for that. But you can certainly ask E.ON at any point what they're doing, or other providers who offer eco. So that's all I'm going to say on that. But moving on to talk about the boiler upgrade scheme, it's a grant, and it covers part of the cost of replacing your fossil fuel heating system with either a heat pump or a biomass boiler. And the values there are written there, so you can see that it'll go towards the cost of an air source heat pump, a smallish way towards the ground source heat pump. Those tend to be more expensive, and also towards a biomass boiler. So the idea is that you would expect to pay some of the cost, potentially a small amount if you're fortunate with a modest air source heat pump, but possibly quite a large amount if you were looking at quite a big ground source heat pump, because they're much more expensive, to the tune of maybe £20,000. So you need to be removing a fossil fuel heating system, whether that's oil or gas or an electric system. Next slide, please, Molly. So the question of eligibility, you must own a property, and it could be a business or a second home or something that you rent out. So that's quite a wide range. You need to have installed or plan to install your new heating system from April this year. So really, it's now. And as I said, you're replacing a fossil fuel heating system. You can't leave the fossil fuel heating system in and run the two together. You've just got to take one out and swap the new system in. So, and you're also still eligible if you've already had funding to make your property efficient. For example, if you've taken advantage of one of the earlier grant schemes, or perhaps the Sustainable Warmth scheme that Beth mentioned, if you were eligible. But if you weren't eligible for the Sustainable Warmth scheme, then at the moment the boiler upgrade scheme is really the only other one around that that you could take advantage of. Next slide, please. So your property needs to have a valid energy performance certificate, just like the scheme that Beth talked about. But importantly, it shouldn't have any outstanding recommendations for loft or cavity wall insulation. So it's assuming that if you're going to have a heat pump, you're fully topped up in your loft and your cavity walls are dealt with if you've got suitable cavity walls. You should be able to get advice from an MCS certified installer as to whether your property is available. You could also get independent advice, of course, from CAFs, and Andrew will be talking a little bit more about that later on. because we can help establish whether a heat pump whether your house is in the right ballpark for a heat pump already, or whether you need to do a bit of work to make it heat pump ready. So there's various ways. You might be ready, your house might already be suitable, but you might need to do a bit of work first to get it to work more optimally with a heat pump. Next slide, please. So if you're thinking about a biomass boiler, all of these following need to be true. So this is really for people who are off gas, which includes a lot of Cumbria, and you need to be in a rural location, and you need to have this emission certificate as well. And also just a word that in self-build properties, you can't get the grant. So you need to be a bit careful if you're in a self-build or a new build property, because this is a retrofit grant. Thank you, Molly. Yeah. So over to Andrew then.
Thanks very much, Gina.
Thanks,
Tina. Go on, Andrew.
Thank you. So what I was going to cover are the free services, the free service of Cosy Homes Cumbria, and services that you can pay for, which are the audits and retrofit support. And so starting off with Cosy Homes. So it's an impartial energy advice service to help you reduce your energy consumption and keep your house warmer and reduce your carbon footprint. So that involves an in-home or by telephone visit. So in other words, mostly in-home, but if you don't want an advisor in your home for any reason, we can do it by phone, and that's what we were doing during COVID. And the next one, please. So, and we've heard, so Cosy Homes has become incredibly popular over the last 9 months or so, as you may imagine, with the energy price crisis and a lot of interest from the media as well. And we did feature on ITV News ITV Borders on Tuesday evening, and one of our advisors with a client there talking about the benefits of the scheme, which I'll cover in the session. Thanks, Molly. So what is Cosy Home and what's involved? So say an in-depth advice visit from one of the advisors, where the advisor will also offer to provide what we call easy measures. And these are the quick fit measures, such as radiator foils that go reflective foils that drop in behind radiators if you have them, and they help reflect the heat back into the radiator in the room, minimize the loss. Also included in the easy measures are lighting, so we can replace any non-LED bulbs with LED bulbs, or we can replace a certain number of them if they're accessible and easy to fit of a certain type. So there's quick wins there, but the scheme can also do a draft proofing assessment. So the assessor will check out the house and ask if it requires it, and if you want installation of draft proofing, then we can specify that, and an installer will come along at a later occasion and provide those measures for you. What Cosy Homes also provides is general advice inquiries, so you can contact us through our website or by phone with a general advice query. So that's like if you've got a question about how to best control the radiator temperatures, or using the thermostat, a common question that comes up, how best to program the timer to heat your home, those sort of inquiries, then you can send those to us, contact us by phone or online for that. And we're also available at drop-ins at a number of different events around Cumbria. We also provide energy champion training. So that's free training for people, professionals or people in the community who feel they can share the message of Cosy Homes. They might meet people through work or they go about their life, and identify people who may benefit from this scheme. So what I'll just cover is also that this is Cumbria-wide, like the other scheme, the other schemes, in fact, that we've talked about already. So it's anybody who lives in Cumbria, but it's got an eligibility criteria. And that eligibility criteria is a little bit different to the scheme that Beth has described, but it's all on our website, and it's based around health, disability, income, or other vulnerability. It's quite a long list on the website. It's quite broad, but it includes pension age and households where there's a child of less than under 5 years or under there. So, and just to say, it is a fully funded scheme, so there is no charge. So it's much like Sustainable Warmth Cumbria. There is no charge for the visit or the installation service or the materials if you go for the draft proofing elements. Okay, and the next one, please. So as I say, it's county-wide, operating in all districts. There's a little bit of information on that slide, but I think the bit that I wanted just to include, it's a little bit small to read even on my screen, so hopefully I can zoom in a little bit. On the right-hand side, it just covers what is the energy saving advice, energy saving measures, draft proofing, and support for grants. So we can help refer on to other schemes such as Eco, that Tina's described, and also Sustainable Warmth Cumbria. So give you that independent view on those grants. So what we've achieved in year 21 is sort of summarised there, quite extensive, but just to say, you know, I'm not going to go through that in great detail, but just to say the savings for 22. So this is like the number of clients we've met has just virtually doubled. So in 22 so far, we've, you know, doubled those sort of outcomes for people. And of course, the cost saving, with the energy price rise, is of course more considerable. And the next one, please. So draft proofing installations. I was sort of hoping there might be a list of detail on that slide. Oh, okay, maybe the next one. If you just drop back to that. So there we have just a picture there, just to remind me of the installations at the draft proofing, the type of thing that we can install. So it's a separate visit, and this is if those things are deemed to be required. So we can do loft hatches, just a thermal image of a loft hatch there, showing temperatures, you know, much colder, 3-4 degrees colder coming through there. So we can put draft proofing strip around there. And it's one of the most sort of forgotten areas of drafts in a house, largely because, you know, the heat's going up there. You don't tend to feel the draft, but you're losing the heat, and also moisture from the house is going up into the cold loft space, which can be a problem. So loft hatches are sort of high on the priority, but also more commonly, more known for many people is, of course, draft proofing a door. And there's a picture there of a draft proof installation for the door. And you do get a choice of colour for your draft proofing strip normally. So with a brass coloured handle, you might go for a sort of brass coloured gold door strip, but in this case the client wanted the silver one that matched maybe the frame better, but that's the door seal. So they're good quality metal edged door seals with rubber seals. It can be adjusted as well, so we get the right sort of fit, and if they need to be readjusted, they can be. So that's the door seals. We do window seals, letterboxes and keyholes, and also the chimney flue as well of an open fire. We've got chimney sheep which can go in there, which is a sort of basically a wool thing with a handle that sort of can temporarily fill the flue when the fireplace is not in use. So, and the next one, please, Molly. Thank you. Just a summary there of what some of our clients have been saying about the service. Great feedback from a wide number of people across the county. And the next one, please, Molly. Thank you. So just moving on then to energy champions. So these could, as I said earlier, frontline workers, volunteers, anybody really who feels able to tell a friend or a relative or a client about Cosy Homes, helping them helping them with detail of the scheme, but also actively referring them into the scheme if the person wants it. So an energy champion can go straight onto our website cosyhomes.org.uk, and can fill in, just follow the link, inquire now. So it's a green button on the homepage, apply now, sorry, and you click there and you can apply for yourself or for another person. So it's quite straightforward. And then what happens is, so we've got next week is the Energy Champion training sessions, 1 hour on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, and it's straightforward to book a place through our events page on our website. And the next one, thanks. And just in the Culture Cosy Homes, it does include smart meter advice. So we'll encourage people to consider a smart meter. Still, just less than half of UK households have a smart meter, but there are benefits in having one, which we've listed there. One of the most significant, of course, is you've got an easy to read meter that you can have anywhere, virtually anywhere in your home. And you can see how much you're spending in real time. We find that incredibly useful to see what we're spending each day, especially at the moment as we begin to hit the £6 a day, £7 a day points. Maybe some of you have a smart meter and you've hit the £10 a day, but for some people we'll soon be into the £100 a week territory, which is pretty scary. A smart meter, maybe you don't want a smart meter, maybe you don't want to know, but it's helpful and can help you plan energy use. You see that one there, £1.41 spent in a day. So maybe we need to upgrade a photo with one that's got a more realistic figure, like £5, £6. And of course, one of the key things about smart meters potentially, through the government scheme, when more details are confirmed, you could get paid for reducing your energy usage at peak time. So you may have heard about that on the news, but that's only available for people with smart meters because you can't measure the energy usage day by day, hour by hour without it. Great. And the next slide, please, Molly. Thank you. So just details there of how to apply, which I mentioned. cosyhomes.org.uk. So paid services include our energy audits, so the CAF's Home Retrofit Planner, but also includes the next stages of advice following the Home Retrofit Planner, and include thermal imaging surveys and other audits for non-domestic properties as well. So what is Home Retrofit Planner? So it is our extensive, detailed audit service where we provide advice on what retrofit options are available or possible to you. So you may want to have that independent view. Maybe you're going looking towards a grant scheme and you want an independent assessment as to what would be beneficial. You may be paying for things yourself. If you've got some retrofit budgets that people have are sometimes £20,000–30,000, sometimes up to 100 and over £100,000. So it maybe is worthwhile spending around £600 up to £1,000 on detailed professional advice. So that's what our Home Retrofit Planner does. And the key of the process is a site assessment, but also a model of the house. So an energy model of the heat loss of the house and the measure of the carbon footprint usage. So we come along and measure the whole house and build that model. And then we've got that baseline for what the energy heat demand is, what your energy consumption may be, and we compare with any bills that you have, but then we've got a baseline. And then what we can do with the modelling is then apply wall insulation to the model, or we can apply underfloor insulation, or we can take out the windows and put triple glazing in, or we can add a heat pump, put solar panels on. So it's quite easy in the model to do all of these things. And the idea that you can see in the model what the energy saving would be. And also the audit gives you a breakdown of the cost savings, of the cost savings, but also the cost indication of the cost of the measures. So it's a substantial report, detailed report. You get a follow-up consultation as well with the assessor, and that's the Home Retrofit Planner. And the next slide, please. Okay, and Tina, would you like to cover the follow-up services that are available to the Home Retrofit Planner clients?
Okay, yes, that's great. So for those people who've already had their home retrofit planner, and I would say home retrofit planner has been running now for perhaps 4 or 5 years, but we get people who come back to us and say, now we need some help with the next bit. So we know what we want to do, but what now? What do we need to do next? So the next step that we've developed and is now up and running is our scope of works step. And that really comes straight out of the home retrofit planner. We usually give 3 scenarios or 3 options of the kind of things you could do using home retrofit planner. And the scope of works really is a fairly short conversation or phone call or Zoom call, where it's an opportunity to figure out, by talking to the assessor, which of those things does it make sense for me to choose. So you're choosing based on the report, but you can ask the assessor questions, anything you haven't understood, trying to gauge what's most cost effective or what makes most sense in your particular circumstances. You might have a long-term plan for the building, you might want to do things in steps and want to figure out whether you're going about it in a logical way. So it's all about making a decision around what is it that I'm going to do perhaps now in the short term, and what do I also want to perhaps do in the medium term or the long term. So that's what scope of works is about. It's about crystallizing those decisions and coming to a decision from which you can then start to plan. Okay, what am I know what I'm going to do. Now how am I going to do it? So the steps that follow on from that, some people need some help at the pre-design stage. So that might be as simple as, I need a structural survey because I've got a big crack in the middle of the house. How am I going to sort that out before I start retrofitting? Or it might be that there's damp or some other kind of issue that's been highlighted in the survey, or that you already knew about, or that has come out in the course of the conversations. And we can flag up the kind of things you might need to think about before you start talking to an architect or some other designer. And we can help people find suitable people who will be able to advise you, so specialist advice. Then those people who are doing particularly a big retrofit, you're definitely going to need some design advice if you're really changing the whole house. So that can be quite important to choose the right kind of designer for the building you've got. If you've got a traditional building, you want to talk to someone who knows about traditional buildings, and so on. But we can also point people towards light touch advice, where you might not be doing anything too complicated or dramatic, but it might be useful to have some kind of design input to make sure that you're choosing the right set of products, or they're being installed in the right kind of way. And you want to talk to someone who really knows about it to get you started, so that you know what it is that you want your builder to do, or maybe that you want to do yourself even. And then after that, there'll be a process of selecting the right contractor, the appropriate contractor for your kind of house and for the kind of work that you're doing. So we're building up our service to ultimately take people through the whole of the retrofit, if that's what you would like, and to provide that bit of independent advice at each step of the way, so that you've got that confidence that you're not being told what to do, perhaps by someone who you're not sure whether they're giving you the best information possible. And many builders aren't retrofit builders, and perhaps don't know what they don't know. So it's helpful to feel informed and to have expertise and independent advice as well. So and a little call out as well to people who are construction professionals, or who have used construction professionals who you think are very good. We'd love to hear about them, because we're offering training to those who want to do more retrofit, who want to extend their retrofit skills. And we also want to have a nice long list of construction professionals, retrofit professionals, who we can mention to anyone who comes to CAFS wanting to know who's good at this kind of retrofit, who's a suitable person for my house, for my kind of project. So that's something that we're developing now at the moment, and hopefully to grow into the future. The other thing, shall I carry on, Andrew, with the...
Should I just before that, should I just add just on cost? I mentioned the sort of cost range for just to illustrate. So for a small to medium sized property with a floor area of up to 110 square meters, and if there's not a lot of complication or a number of extensions that complicate the audit, and if it's within 45-minute drive approximately of our base, then the audit is £630 plus VAT. So it's similar to a survey, like when you're buying a house, a building condition survey level 2. So just to give you an idea of that.
So the other thing that you can do is to inform yourself, and this is free. We've done a lot of webinars over the last year and we've recorded them. So there's a list of them here on this slide, and I think Molly, the slides will be made available afterwards, so you don't have to remember this list or the link. But each of these webinars covers introductions and then different topics. Some of them focus specifically on traditional buildings, so that would be Appleby Moot Hall at the bottom right there, and Chapel Street, which I can't quite see at the bottom, but I think it's there. And yes, there it is on the left. So some are specifically about traditional buildings and others are more generally about any building. But it's really worth watching these even before you come and talk to us with your questions. It might answer some of the questions that you've got. It puts you in a really good position when you're talking to architects or builders or other building specialists, that you've got some knowledge under your belt, and that's a really good position to be in before you start talking about any of this, is to feel that you've got a certain level of knowledge. The webinars go into a fair bit of detail, so for some people you'll be grabbing every bit of detail, and other people will just want to get the basics, get started. So it's up to you how much you take away from them. Don't feel overwhelmed if you're going in and this is new, but likewise we hope that if you're quite well informed that there's something new in there for you as well. I think that's all I wanted to say on the playlists. Just some examples really. That's a screenshot taken from our insulation retrofit, and talking about insulation webinar, talking about the different kinds of insulation and the do's and don'ts of installing it. And then the next slide. This was a webinar about heat pumps. So this included householders who'd installed or not installed heat pumps, as well as some research findings from Jess, who's a speaker in the photograph there, who did a study on householders in Cumbria who got heat pumps. And we have a specialist installer in that particular webinar who gave some really detailed and very good information about webinars, well worth listening to. So he talked a lot of common sense, and there's some rules of thumb in there which would probably be quite useful. So there are some other sources of information which you might like to use, and Molly will be circulating the slides, so no need to worry about getting them down because they'll be coming around to you anyway.